Headline News, I'm Chuck Roberts. Yet one more last-ditch effort at deadline diplomacy expected this half hour from UN Secretary General Javier Pérez de Cuellar. His statement is coming after 2 days of last-minute Security Council meetings aimed at finding some solution to the Gulf crisis. He will reportedly appeal one last time to Saddam Hussein to pull his troops from Kuwait. His statement is following several apparently unsuccessful last-ditch peace efforts today. They include a French plan rejected by the U.S., Great Britain, and Israel because it linked a Middle East peace conference with a Gulf solution.
We certainly do subscribe to the principle of a last appeal to Saddam Hussein to obey the Security Council resolutions and leave Kuwait. But we do have very considerable reservations over the particular wording proposed by the French, which seems to us to very materially weaken the Security Council resolutions and have some other drawbacks as well. So whilst we do subscribe to the principle of a last appeal, I fear I cannot agree with the precise wording proposed by the French.
And
if President Bush gives the order to start hostilities, the U.S. military will put its war plans into action. CNN's Wolf Blitzer is at the Pentagon for a live update. Wolf?
Donna, Pentagon officials confirmed that the U.S. in the past few days has moved about 20 long-range B-52 strategic bombers to the Middle East from Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. The B-52s will be available to carpet bomb Iraqi fortifications in Kuwait, no matter how a war erupts. Pentagon officials have by no means ruled out the possibility that Iraq may fire the first shots in a Gulf War. U.S. intelligence estimates continue to suggest that Saddam Hussein believes he can suffer a major military setback while at the same time emerge the winner politically. If the Iraqi leader is convinced that a U.S. strike is imminent, he may order a first strike using his ballistic missiles against targets in eastern Saudi Arabia and more likely in Israel. Intelligence analysts say Saddam Hussein could emerge an Arab world hero by inflicting a punishing blow on Israel or the Allied forces while at the same time not backing down. But that assumes he survives what U.S. officials say will be a massive, sustained U.S. offensive. The Pentagon says Iraq has moved more troops, tanks, armored personnel carriers, and artillery pieces into Kuwait. And Iraq has expanded its fortifications west of Kuwait in an effort to stop any flanking U.S. ground assault.
We don't see any evidence that they're in any way pulling out of Kuwait. Quite the contrary. From our last briefing, the number of forces, tanks, artillery pieces, and so forth has gone up, which is certainly not consistent with their withdrawal.
There are now more than 415,000 U.S. troops in the region and another 265,000 allied forces. They are supported by 6 aircraft carrier battle groups, more than 100 other warships, and some 2,700 combat aircraft, including these F-117A stealth fighters that are expected to launch any U.S. airstrike.
In the first few days, maybe the first few hours, as a matter of fact, of this intense bombardment, which will begin the war, perhaps the enemy forces will crack and break and throw down their arms. We'd have to be very lucky for that to happen, and we can't count on it. I would think it would last certainly weeks, maybe even months.
Pentagon officials say Saddam Hussein has repeatedly miscalculated over the years, although they acknowledge he has managed to survive. Privately, they say his current miscalculation could wind up costing him not only his political survival, but his physical survival as well. Wolf Blitzer, CNN Live at the Pentagon.
Early morning has arrived in a Persian Gulf region that could become a battleground. After months of waiting, troops may soon learn whether they'll fight. CNN's Charles Jaco is standing by live with the U.S. forces in Saudi Arabia. Charles?
Well, good morning. We're at 6:20 in the morning in Saudi Arabia. The countdown to the deadline continues without a great deal of additional action. We have had some additional reports, though, in the last few hours. One reports that several B-52 long-range bombers have been moved from their bases in Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean to someplace in the Middle East, not necessarily Saudi Arabia. Another report that the Kuwaitis are ready to set oil tankers, the Iraqis, pardon me, are ready to set oil tankers in Kuwait harbor on fire, presumably to create a smokescreen in case of any amphibious landing. And another news organization is reporting that U.S. forces have already begun jamming Iraqi communications in and around Kuwait. Now, it's an hour and a half approximately until the deadline. We're not sure that means much of anything because every military person we've spoken to here in Saudi Arabia has said no attack would be launched during the daylight hours, and of course the deadline will be 8 in the morning here. Everyone we've talked to would prefer to wait until the evening when U.S. and allied forces could operate under cover of darkness. However, if you talk to the troops in the field, well, those troops in the field say they're prepared.
615,000 Allied troops wait in the desert, armed with over 2,000 warplanes and 1,400 tanks. Are they ready for war? They say they are.
It's not a question of being ready, it's a question of being Saddam being ready. Now, he took us away from my family for Christmas, now that's my vengeance. And if the man wants to play around and take me away from my family, then hey, he can suffer the consequences.
Yes, we're ready for whatever happens. We're ready. Sure are. I believe we're ready for him.
Yeah, we're gonna go over and kick some butt. That's all I can say, we're gonna kick butt.
But while the Allies plan to do that kicking, they are not as ready as some military analysts would like them to be.
One classical rule of warfare is that attackers should outnumber defenders by a 3-to-1 ratio, but Allied forces only slightly outnumber the 540,000 Iraqi troops in and around Kuwait. Iraq's tanks outnumber Allied armor by a 3-to-1 ratio. What the Allies believe will tip the scale in their favor is more sophisticated equipment and massive air power.
Allied air forces are more modern and better trained than the Iraqis. That aerial power may be able to neutralize Iraq's numerical advantage in other areas. Iraq has about 4,000 tanks around Kuwait. They have 1,000 like these, Soviet-made T-72s. They can fire shells over a mile, and they were introduced in 1972. Western analysts say they can travel about 125 miles before suffering major breakdowns. The top Western tank is the M1A1. It's newer, introduced in 1986, and can fire shells twice as far as the T-72. It, on average, can run about 200 miles before suffering mechanical problems. Despite Iraq's superior numbers, the quality edge here goes to the Allies. Some analysts, though, say a major problem with the Allies may be the Allies. 28 nations have pitched into the multinational force, but the U.S. and Britain are the only nations that have clearly said they would press any war over Kuwait into Iraq itself. Others, including the thousands of Arab troops, would join any attack on Kuwait, but it's unclear whether they would carry the war further and agree to cross the border into Iraq. There are also questions about the Allies' medical preparedness. The group Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War claims the U.S. and other nations do not have enough beds, drugs, or trained personnel to handle the estimated number of wounded.
You guys ready?
The one axiom of war is that you're never as prepared as you'd like to be. The grunts on the ground think they're as ready as they'll ever be.
Anything goes, we're ready. Not looking forward to it, but, you know, expectations are high.
And the men and women of Desert Shield can now only watch and wait and prepare for the war that may be coming.
Part of that preparedness will involve 6 aircraft carrier battle groups in and around this area with a total of around 470 planes. There are 1,300 U.S. planes alone in this theater. So the idea is that if war comes, and it's obviously still not certain that it will, but if war comes, the first part of it, at least the first 96 hours, will involve mammoth aerial bombardment. Charles Jaco, CNN, reporting live from Saudi Arabia.
Charles Jaco, thank you very much.